Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here, and welcome to the Wealth Lotus podcast. Today I'm joined with Matt Wilson. He is the CEO of Sterling Metals, ticker symbol is SAG on the TSXV, and they have their Sail Pond project in northern Newfoundland. I've been hearing a few people recommend this story, so I'm looking forward to hearing what Matt has to say. So Matt, welcome onto the show.
Hey Kyle, thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I always start off the same way with every new guest. I ask them what they were doing when they were my age. So I'm just going to ask you, what were you doing from 20 to 26 years old?
So I guess I could split that into two. So from 20 to 23, I was at school. I was doing my undergrad at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. And then for the next year, I was a baseball player. Spent time in Chicago, spent time playing for Team Canada for a little bit. And then after that, kind of off the bounce of 2009, I ended up being right place, right time, and ended up getting a job at a resource-focused investment venture fund that dealt with public markets called Pine Tree Capital. I suppose it was probably just a bit before your time when it crashed, but Pine Tree was known for having hundreds and hundreds of positions in junior mining companies around the world. And so I was there from 24 on until about I was 30. So
for about 6 years with Pine Tree. That's interesting. I want to ask you, for the young listeners out there that might be new retail investors just getting into the capital market space, you dealt with all these resource companies, thousands of them. Anything to share with listeners that isn't taught in school?
Yeah, I think that there's one thing taught in school really, and it's like based on value, and you have your discounted cash flow, which is extremely difficult to do when you're dealing with junior venture companies, whether you're in tech or biotech or commodities, right? Because there's so much probability associated with risk. And I think that there's not numerous ways that people can make money in the junior space, especially in the mining markets and especially in an inefficient market like we deal with. And I think that, you could be following stock promoters. That's not going to be taught to you in school. And it's, that there's a method to that where people are hot and they talk good stories and their stocks go up, or you could follow really good people. You could follow the Robert Friedlands and the Marco Days of the world, and usually what they're doing is probably pretty good. Or you could do your own deep dive into something and really try and understand the industry. And this is always my favorite, but I think that it takes a lot of work to understand that. So I think it's what's not taught in schools. There's many ways that you can kind of play the game, but just make sure that you stay true to the way that you're doing it. So don't fall in love with a company that you're bought as a trade and then all of a sudden talk about it as the best asset because you might not have done the work to do it. And that's where I think people start to get burned. But if you kind of stick with your guns, then usually there's a good amount of success you can be had.
And are you looking at thousands? I don't know if you invested in thousands at Pine Tree, but are you a diversification guy, or do you see that as a diversification? I know some people view it that way.
Yeah, I guess Buffett says that diversification is for those who don't know what they're doing, but I think that there is an element of it that you got to have. Again, I mean, if you went to Vegas and you were going to roll the dice, and I said that you had a 70% chance of winning or 60% chance of winning, and you only had, each table you had one roll. You wouldn't really just roll one table. You'd probably do a bunch of tables, but at the end of the day, hopefully you come out ahead. I think that, there's probably better ways to compare investing in this space, but at the end of the day, there's probabilities. I love this project that we have at Sterling, but there is a chance that, you drill and you don't hit something. And then there's chances that, across the board and different things. So I think, I guess they teach that 30 companies is properly diversified when you talk about sample sizes and such. I think owning 30 juniors is a lot for the individual investor. But I definitely, even to family and friends that talk to me about my own company, I say, look, like, don't just put all your money into this one. I think that you need to spread it around at least. I like to think that 5 to 10, maybe 10 sounds pretty good. 10's a lot, but I think at least 5 for sure for anyone, because you got to take pretty good shots because sometimes they miss.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. And tell me, is this the first time you've been a CEO of a company? Why should people put their faith in you and put their hard-earned money behind Sterling Metals?
Yeah, so I started out as CEO. So I had said I spent 6 years as an analyst and principal at kind of this venture crossover hedge fund, dealing with resources, technology, and I kind of covered everything under the sun, and specifically a lot of mining there as well. in 2017, I took over a company called Latin American Minerals. I had invested in it with a bunch of colleagues who had restructured the company a year earlier. I had followed someone who knew what they were doing. Eric Sprott had written a big check, and the guys that I worked with in the past, they were redoing the deal, and it was gold exploration and a mine restart in Paraguay. Company raised $5-6 million. I thought it was going to be a really good time. The market was really down in 2016, and then in 2017, a year later, kind of all the money was gone, and no one knew what was going on. There were no holes in the ground. There was definitely no gold being produced. So I kind of just put my hand up and said, "Look, I'll give it a crack." And that was the first time I had that I had been a CEO. That company is actually Sterling today. That company, we drilled, we actually got some gold going in the mine, but at the end of the day, we had 1,000 illegal miners on our project, and we didn't quite hit enough that it was worthwhile keeping. So we ended up selling the asset, and eventually I turned it into Sterling today. So in the meantime, I've also been CEO of a technology company. But yeah, mining company CEO for the first time in 2017.
Okay, thank you. And something I was looking at, and I do like to see, is that you've been putting more money to Sterling Metals. I see you've been adding to your position, so you probably have a pretty healthy percentage of your net worth with Sterling Metals.
I do. I think it's, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I have a pretty good position in Sterling when you add kind of the stock that's bought and the stock, then the option grants that happen. I think that it's always good when we restructured the company. The deal that we did was at 15 cents, and that was that's when most of the insiders participated and did. So there's no, 0.0001% stock in this company. Actually, most of us bought into the previous company, which, if you looked at the rollback structure, was at 10 cents, was at $1, $1.20, $1.50. So we're well quite out of the money. But there was no real low, tiny round that kind of, that's how everyone gets their huge percentages. And so the insider ownership thing is always a little bit skewed. And I think that it's just, where did you invest your money?
Yeah, exactly. I said at the beginning of the podcast that I've had a few people recommend you come on. And as soon as I looked at your website, I noticed your advisor page. You had Denis, Laviolette, and Kelly Malcolm. They were both guests of mine. I had them on the show. I like them, both respected geologists. But you don't have a geology background, right? But you have history with them. So I'm just wondering if you could share your history and story with Kelly and Denise. How'd you all meet?
Yeah, sure. So Denis and I met in 2011. Actually, he had come back from his time in Ghana, where he was working on site as a geologist, production geologist. He was considering moving into capital markets at the time. Ended up actually going back to Ghana for a couple of years, and then when he came back again from Africa in 2013, he ended up joining Pine Tree, where I was an analyst as well. So Denis and I worked together pretty closely from 2013 onward, and have stayed quite close since then. So it was great to find out that Goldspot had done work, and Newfound Gold had this asset before, and that there was this whole history there where Denis was there, because I have a lot of respect for Denis as a geologist and a guy, and he really likes this project. So that was a really nice way to come into this, and one of the reasons that I was able to kind of push forward on this so quickly. And then Kelly and I worked in the same office together here in Toronto for, I don't know, 3 years, I guess. He sits right across the way from me, and our office is kind of a combination of lawyers and CEOs and people that raise money and people invest money, and a whole kind of public venture market incubator, so to speak. And so there's lots of deals that come through, and he and I've been chatting for a long time, and so have a lot of comfort together, and know each other pretty well. So that's so I've known him, I guess, 4 or 5 years for sure, but we've been in the same office for about 3.
Okay, thank you for that. And then your other advisor I didn't talk to before, but I know of him, Mark. What's the relationship with Altius? Because didn't they see value in this project? What did they see in Sail Pond? And they wanted some vehicle to progress with this property, right?
Yeah, so Mark and I, small world for sure. Mark and I worked at Pine Tree together before Denis and I worked at Pine Tree together. Mark was a mining analyst at GMP, came to Pine Tree as the mining analyst there. And we worked together for a couple of years. And he got a better bull market than Denis did, for sure. But then Mark went into the banking world, and then eventually ended up at Altius. But Mark and I stayed close over the years. So last summer, Mark and I and Kelly actually were all out having a beer, socially distanced beer during COVID. I think we were playing golf at the time. And Mark knew that I was looking for an asset to put into the shell that I had, and I really was looking for something that was not gold, and that was in Canada, because I wanted to be able to go to the project during COVID. I didn't want to deal with any sort of, my last company was in Paraguay, so not that my bar was set pretty low, but and so Mark said that he had this project that had just come back to Altius. It had been in the hands of Newfound Gold, who had done their work, and then eventually didn't want to keep going with it when they drilled 20 meters of 100 grams at Queensway. So because they had a bunch of stock that they had to bring to Altius in return for the asset. So that asset got thrown back to Altius in about February of 21. And so Altius kind of, the silver market was moving, and they wanted to find someone who could kind of take this and advance it and knew what they were doing. And so Mark and I, having had a relationship for a really long time, we ended up kind of chatting. And as soon as I read the technical report on this and kind of found out who wrote it and how respected he is, and it was an easy one to push for. I think we had an LOI going in 9 days, the whole group of us.
Very cool. And tell us more about Sail Pond.
So Sail Pond is for me, a pretty unique thing, because it kind of ticks every box that I would want to find in something that is, at the beginning. This project is a 12-kilometer long soil anomaly, which matches a 12-kilometer long outcrop anomaly, which matches 12 kilometers of geophysics, which shows you that there's, high grades, a structural control, and a big system pushing out minerals. So you've got this kind of, massive linear trend line that is pretty hard to find, especially hard to find when you can, if I wanted to get to the project in 3.5 hours. I mean, I could fly from Toronto to St. Anthony in theory, and drive from the nearest airport in 30 minutes to the project. It's pretty flat, it's near power, it's close to a town, but not too close that you have to move it. The town is extremely supportive. Everyone is really nice there. And so, you have this great infrastructure, great access, super safe jurisdiction, but this world-class grade and size potential to go with it. And so for the most part, everywhere I'd seen, when you can find a project like this that had never been touched before, you're in very weird places of the world. You're climbing up mountains to 4,800 feet and things like that. They just are a challenge. And, I just come from a challenge in Paraguay dealing with, people who just didn't really want to mine at all. And so that it made it very hard for us to even drill one hole, because you had to deal with a number of things that were going on, including trying to get permits from 2 different governors. So I think that it's this kind of matchup of all those things together made me really excited. And now we've started drilling. We started drilling in June. We drilled 8,500 meters or 8,400, whatever the number was, meters this year. And it took us a little while to figure out what was going on. 12-kilometer strike. This project's never been drilled. It was only found at the end of 2016. And so it took us a little while to figure out exactly what was, what was happening, how was the mineralization being controlled. But then we kind of figured it out halfway through, turned our holes around. Literally, we turned the orientation of the drill holes. And then we started hitting some pretty fun stuff. And the stuff that we've released to date, it's the high grades are pretty narrow. You're talking a 1/4 meter, 0.35 meters in these quartz veins, but you're starting to see these pretty interesting zones develop visually as we kind of push forward on it. And so, we have about 6,000 meters of assays to go. And, we've seen grades up to 1,500 grams, 1,600 grams silver and 6% copper and 29% zinc and 2.5% antimony, all from this massive sulfide intersection in this 0.35 meters. And I think that to find that diversification of metals in one project, in this safe jurisdiction, right off the bat in our first drill program, when we have all these assays to go, it's a pretty interesting, it's a pretty exciting project for me. So I think that there'll be a lot better of a story to tell when we get the rest of the assays in, kind of show how the picture comes together. But it's pretty interesting because the turn of our project was interpreting how the structural control, how this flexure of this argillite kind of trapped this mineralization, and where the dolostone host rock hit the argillite, that's where we're finding this really nice areas of mineralization, this quartz veining, this brecciated kind of host rock. And I think that when you look at the IP survey that was done over the property, actually by Newfound Gold a couple of years ago, you see that you can pick it up really nicely. It kind of looks like this little curve. And so you see that where we were drilling in the north, actually, when we were saying we didn't drill that much in the north, you see these different areas of targets that we should be drilling, and we drilled probably a couple hundred meters. You can see the holes a couple hundred meters to the east, and so we didn't even really hit it. So lots of potential here, and so it'll be a really interesting project to push forward on.
So thank you for that. I appreciate that. What would you say the market would be getting interested in then? Is it silver and precious metals, or what would you say this deposit is?
Yeah, so I came into this thinking it was mostly going to be silver. The outcrop, the trench samples that we had 4,500 grams silver. There was 15% copper and big lead, zinc, and all this stuff, but I kind of had this mindset of just silver. So far, what we're seeing is probably 40% of the driver is silver. But what I really love about this project is that it's not just a precious metal story, not to offend precious metal stories. It's a great thing, but this is silver kind of carries itself with gold, right? If gold runs, then silver is going to run. But silver is one of those, it is unique in a way because, for this electrification of the world, you need silver. You need it for EVs, you need it for solar cells. But then also you get exposure to copper, to zinc, things that you need, to antimony, which I'm learning is basically in every electronic that we have, and then also to lead. I mean, you kind of get this polymetallic grouping of metals that gives you exposure to all of this, and all in Canada. Raymond James, the analyst there, Craig Stanley, did a really interesting thing the other day, and he showed how many projects were being drilled for silver in Canada. And this is producers drilling, juniors drilling, it's just 20. And how many were drilling for lead, zinc? 20. Copper is 50. And then there's a lot of gold. And I think if you put together the metals that we have, and then again, you kind of put that jurisdiction on top of it and the access on top of it. I mean, we're not in northern Quebec, which is really hard to get to. We're road access and power nearby. And so being able to kind of have that unique aspect to our project and then add in that district potential makes this pretty interesting.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned antimony a few times, and I didn't hear about it until I read an article on CEO about your company and this antimony. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what the drill results had, and what is this economic? What is antimony? What's it used for?
So truthfully, I'm still learning about antimony. There's a great article that Forbes came out with, an article of antimony being, the next, the metal you've never heard of that everyone needs. It's one of those metals that 90% of it is controlled in China and Russia. It's something that you need in all of your electronics. I know that it's a fire retardant, which I guess is important for climate change, excuse me. But what's really interesting is that antimony is about $1 a pound more than copper. And so there's not a lot of antimony mines. Again, 90% is controlled out of country. And then it was named last October, I think Canada did this. They created a list of 36 strategic elements. A lot of them are on there, or the rare earth elements that all those heavy rare earth elements that get broken down that no one really knows about. But antimony was on there as well, as was copper. But antimony is one that you just don't have any source of it, right? And so the antimony and our silver are extremely highly correlated. And antimony and silver, one of the analogs that geologists gave us was for Keno Hill. And Keno Hill was a big silver district, produced hundreds of millions of ounces over 100 years. And there's a huge correlation there between antimony and silver. And so what we're seeing as well, even in our early holes, is that when that silver goes up, you're seeing two things. You're seeing a very high component of sphalerite, which carries the zinc. And then this antimony goes with the silver. And I don't know right now if we haven't broken down the rock type yet to show if the mineral itself is kind of this like ruby red antimony and silver, or if it's something else, but there is a huge correlation between the antimony and silver. So hopefully as we kind of get the rest of the assays back, we're going to start to see that. I don't know what the metallurgy is of antimony, how you separate it, how you process it, what that turns into. But it is very encouraging to see in the sulfides that we are finding that there is a strong antimony component in those high grades. That's pretty interesting, especially if we can find kind of those blowout zones of the veining.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting stuff. I was interested in that article I read, but I want to know what we talked on the advisors of your company, and we talked about you, but who are the boots on the ground? Who's doing the work in Newfoundland right now?
So we hired a firm called Mercator Geological Services. Mercator is a company out of Nova Scotia. Worked on many projects. I think the guy that was leading the project, he has done 10 years, formerly Barrick, formerly Newmont. The guy that was running the program on the ground, Corey, he just came out of Pretium, had been a senior geologist there for 5 years. So they were the guys who were running the program, did a lot of the work. And so it was kind of a, it takes a village to raise a child kind of thing. So it was, you had Kelly kind of running the program from Toronto, was kind of the oversight. And then you had, Denis and Goldspot kind of giving their opinion here and there. Mercator was doing it, but then they also had their theory guys giving good insight and creating drill programs. And a lot of the drill targets that turned out to be really well were very Mercator driven. So a lot of credit to them on that. And then, so that kind of combination of people. And then you also had some input from, we had some guys out there from SRK. We had our PhD geologist who wrote our technical report. And then the chief geo of Altius lives 3 hours south. So he was able to come up every once in a while and look at the project. So a lot of different insights into how the program was run. And then the Mercator guys were running the program on the ground.
Okay, very cool. And Goldspot, are they still active with you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, Goldspot does a great job of data interpretation, right? They took, we started this project getting 4 years of work on this project. There was 4 different geophysical surveys that were interpreted very poorly. There were soil samples, there were things all over the place. When we first got the IP survey, it was learned that kind of, the vectoring was off. And so that's why nothing really kind of lined up. And so they were able to kind of take it, rejig it, put it all together, and then make a story out of it, right? And so that's how we were able to kickstart this thing. When we get all of our results back, they will be for sure kicked back to them. They've got a great team, great tech, that sort of thing. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And you said 8,400, 8,500 meters drilled. How many have you got back so far, and how many more to come?
Yeah, I'd say we got about 2,500 meters back, I would say. I think that, that's about right. And then so 6,000 meters still to come, 550, 500, whatever the number is. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard you say in an interview before that you have cash in the bank, but you're going to wait and see what the drill results are, and then you're going to make a more educated approach at this, right?
Yeah, I think that, it's always a give and take, right? You need money to drill, but the share price has to be high to raise money, so that makes sense. And we are lucky because we made a decision to raise some extra money when find really good shareholders. Only about 9 people played. We raised $3 million in March. So we have, I would say, about $3.5 million in the bank right now. Let's just say that we exit the year with 3. All in drill costs, probably $250 a meter, which includes geologists, assays, everything like that. So okay, you can definitely get a nice follow-up program going on this money. I'm pretty bullish on the commodity space in general right now as it goes, especially over the next 6 months. So it's a nice position to be in where we're not in a rush. We got lots of assays to come. It's one of the reasons that I was buying the stock. I think that, I think our market cap is 15 million. We have 48 million shares out. So, it's so money there to do a follow-up program as needed.
And the follow-up program, what's the drilling season like there? Because I looked at a map of Sail Pond and where it's located in Newfoundland, and what I thought is it's close to the ocean. Is it exposed to a lot of rain and snow? Like, what is a drill season like at Sail Pond?
Yeah, so it's about 25 kilometers, I think, west-ish from the east coast of the peninsula there where the ocean is. You can get some pretty wicked storms going. I haven't been there in the winter, but apparently the snow gets pretty wild. That being said, the access to this is pretty fantastic. So you drive on a highway that's cleared to another highway that's cleared all year. And then there's a logging dirt road that you would probably snowmobile in. So as soon as you get your drill in and you have your drill on tracks so that it can kind of move back and forth, truthfully, parts of the north zone would be easier to drill in the winter because it would be frozen over and therefore you could stay on top of the snow. So, you can really drill there. You can really drill there all year round without that many issues. Your costs are probably going to be higher using different kind of gas and things like that. And you're going to have more delays because in those wicked snowstorms, people are going to end up staying home. Because right now what we're doing is we have our camp basically as a motel in the town of Roddickton. So it's still 45-minute drive. So, if it's one of those storms, it's a complete whiteout, then no one's going anywhere. So I think that it's more difficult in the winter for sure. And I think that that's why we want to get our assays back before we say when we're drilling again. We've had amazing results and success with our drillers at Logan Drilling. They've been really great. the rate of drilling, they were doing 70 to 100 meters a day. Like we were plowing through rock. It was terrific. So, we've chatted. They're like, no problem. Let us know. And they seem to be pretty flexible right now. I think that the general drilling season in Newfoundland is June to November, October kind of thing. So I think that if we wanted to kind of kickstart a winter program, we'd be a little bit more flexible in timing.
Okay, for sure. And you mentioned the northern zone might be a little easier. Why did you decide to drill where you have been drilling? Like you said, it was a 12-kilometer strike length. How'd you decide where to drill?
So I could say that it's because of some sort of science, but truthfully, it was really just because that was the best couple holes that we hit on a 16-hole program that we didn't hit a ton of stuff that we got excited about. When you combine that with the South Zone showing has our best trench results, our best outcrop showings. I was just on site walking in the South Zone, and honestly, like the trench, you walk up and down, it's just spotted blue copper and sparkly sulfides all over the trench. It's really visually quite stimulating. But the South Zone, we hit a few things down there that we got really excited about. And hole 8, I think we had this half-meter section where we saw 300 grams silver and a nice looking kind of vein, a little bit of copper, a little bit of zinc, that sort of thing. So we saw just enough down there. We were like, oh, this is interesting. And then when we started changing the interpretation of the structure, we saw that that flexure, that structural jog in the IP kind of lined up with where that vein was. And so it was just like, it just made sense. Like, oh, let's just turn the rig around, try and target that again. And then in the first hole, that's what we ended up hitting. So I think that, it was based on success at that point. But now actually, when Kelly and I chat about it, we're just as excited to drill back up in the north as we are to continue exploring down here, because the targets that are up there, there's 5 within even the 2 kilometers just in the north part of the North Zone. So lots of drilling still up there to go.
And can you touch on your share structure and market cap? Who do you have?
Yeah, sure thing. So, yeah, for sure thing. So there's 48 million shares out. As I said, this is a new company. So there's been 3 deals in this company. There's a deal at 15 cents, there's a deal at 30 cents, and there's a deal at 52 cents. And all the other deals in the company would have been done over $1 back when it was a different kind of company. So, so we have 48 million shares out, 40%-ish is institutional and insiders, probably another 15, I would say, is made up of, close investment advisors and people who have been around for a while and very supportive of us. Seem to have a very nice following, and people seem to be excited about this project like we are. So that's really great. And yeah, so our market cap, I don't know what we closed at today, but at 48 million shares out. So at 30 cents, it's 15 million. So probably a little bit over that. But yeah, and then with the $3.5 million of cash, and we have warrants that are outstanding, which are good to know about. But they're all well above where the stock is today. So from that 30-cent deal, we had, I think, 6 million warrants at 45 cents. And then from the 52-cent deal, I think there's 6 million warrants at 78 cents.
Okay.
And then all the options that have been granted to the executives and advisors and all that, I think they're almost all at 52, around there. Yeah, 46 and 52.
Okay, thank you. At the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned something about, did you say Newfound Gold had sterling metals in their portfolio and they had to sell it back to Altius? Is that? Yeah,
so they had the Sail Pond project. So Newfound Gold optioned this project from Altius in 2018, and they're part of their terms, like any option agreement, they had to raise money, they had to spend money, and they had to grant Altius a chunk of their stock. So what they did a lot of the geophysical work that we are relying on, especially the IP survey. They did a nice job on that. They did a property-wide IP survey. They probably spent $500-600 grand on geophysics. And that was done in a lot of the analytics on it was done by Goldspot. So it was a nice transition, but they had the project, and then both because silver at the time was $12. So not as enticing a project for sure, but also because they ended up drilling 20 meters of 100 grams at Queensway. So the prospect of granting Altius any stock for the Sail Pond project when they drilled 20 meters of 100 grams, it's an impossibility. So they gave the project back.
So I know Denis is an advisor, and I don't want you to put words in his mouth, but is he like does he see a lot of value in this play here? Is he worried this is the one that might have got away? Or
I think I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I'm sure that he has mentioned that once or twice, but I think that he really likes this project. He's always been a big supporter of it. This reason why they got it in the first place, and it's the reason why we announced it. And the first call I got was from him saying, "Look, let's do this work together and let's be a part of this together." So Goldspot's a huge supporter, shareholder that's holding their stock, and not just doing the work, but also a big shareholder. So. Yeah, he's a very active advisor. We chat a lot about different things, but yeah, it's part of the push. Our previous drilling, his first thing was, you guys got to do a property-wide EM survey. So we're going to start with some downhole EM to go a little baby step at a time. But yeah, he's a big fan.
Okay, thank you. And one of the reasons I wanted you on is I like having people on before the market knows of them, and people got to know you started in, what was it, October 2020? Like, it is a newer company, it is a newer play. But what would you say the market presence is of Sterling Metals right now? Do institution and retail investors know about this story much yet? And
I would say most of our conversations are first-time conversations. I think that we have between our advisors who are part of very successful companies such as Newfoundland Gold and Amex, Goldspot, and Altius. You get a little bit of chatter and you get people to follow it. And then, our board of directors, you have Richard Patricio on it, who has been doing this for 25 years, and Stephen Keith has been doing it for the same and done billions of dollars of transactions. And so you've got people, again, who talk about the name. So you get a good word of mouth thing going on. So we have a pretty interesting word of mouth spread. But when it comes to people that we don't know, that's always first-time conversations. So mining institutions and retail alike, which is a good thing because our stock seems to trade really well, and we seem to be pretty well positioned. And so that only is a better opportunity as we kind of push forward.
yeah, exactly. And it's kind of it's a timing thing too, right? Why market yourself until you have all these great drill holes that you hope to find? It's interesting. Did you find there was a strong correlation with marketing when you were working at Pine Tree? Did you find there was a strong correlation with marketing and performance in these early stage exploration stocks?
You'd have to define marketing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So I think that there's a couple different kinds of marketing, right? There's your institutional marketing where you're jumping desk to desk to desk and you're in meetings all day and you're telling the story, and it's a different world today as it was back then. Back then you had more institutions willing to sort of buy the stock in the market. So you take a position in private placement, then you buy the stock in the market, and that was kind of part and parcel of what you did. I think now it's more buy and hold. It's a little bit different of a method. So you kind of need more marketing in the organic growth space. So it's not the same thing as when I was at Pine Tree. So I do think that marketing is really important because there's this new wave of people, whether it's millennials or I think that, are you a millennial or are you just below it? You Gen Z?
Yeah, no, I just made it into that category.
You just get in there? Okay. So, but I think that, millennials are coming into their own term of investing in terms of like wanting to buy things. And I think that the more I talk to people outside of that traditional institutional class and kind of that base rate, you actually find a lot of buying power and a lot of knowledge and people that are actually really willing to do the work to buy these things. And then people want a good story. They want people they can kind of get behind, that they can relate to. And they want a good story. They want something that they can get excited about, that they can talk about, that it's sad really that mining gets kind of packaged into this kind of old school sort of way. And then you see all these, tech companies they're okay. They talk about it, but I mean, mining and technology is the same thing. It's still an idea, prove your concept, got to raise money the whole time, and then make a difference in the world if you have something. And that, I think that I get excited about telling the story to new people because this is sort of that difference making asset versus a traditional sort of thing where you get your antimony story and you get your copper silver for EV, push, and then you get your strategic play in Canada. So you can be proud to have an asset like that in Canada. And so, so marketing for that purpose, I think is really important. And one of the reasons it's great to be able to have a chat with you and chat and, just discuss this on the show. But then there's also marketing that is, you got to be wary of some marketing where it's really just for those short-term pushes and that's okay too. But you just have to kind of know what you're getting into as an investor, because sometimes there's a reason that stock is getting pushed up a lot because they need to raise money, or because they need to do X, Y, and Z. And so I think that it's never necessarily a bad thing, but just something to be aware of.
That was an excellent answer. I really appreciate that. That's why I started this channel too, is because everything is either mined, grown, or killed, right? And yeah, it's a speculative space, but there's a lot of good people here. I've talked to a lot of interesting folks on this channel, and it's interesting that a lot of my friends are into crypto, but I see this whole market where people have been making money in the space for a long time, and people have been losing a lot of money in the space for a long time too. But I like people being able to come on and tell their story, and you do have to connect with these individuals and really get behind what they're selling you.
Absolutely. Look, I love crypto as well. I own crypto. I run crypto. I'm a big fan. I think blockchain is a great technology. It's sometimes sad that we can't create a story in mining that can, compete with, a NFT store on the Ethereum virtual platform, right? So I mean, like that, it's that's a great thing too. But I'd love to be able to say, look, like the Shibu coin and mining companies, like I should be able to choose mining companies at some point, right? As a better relative value play. But it's not necessarily as exciting. But hopefully we can. The more we chat about it, the more you kind of get into it, and having that hard asset class you can kind of put your hand on. Hopefully we can get a little bit more life into the space.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm doing my part.
For sure, it's great.
Thank you, Matt, for coming on. I appreciate it. I do have a recurrent segment though. It's called The Vault. It's just mentorship-like questions, not about Sterling Metals. Just what kind of advice you could provide the younger listeners out there. So let's get into The Vault.
You got it.
Like I said, just 3 questions. First question: what did your parents teach you at a young age that has stuck with you to today?
So I would say the first thing that pops into my mind is my dad taught me never to apologize for something that I had no control over. And it all started with throwing a ball over his head when I was 5 years old. And I would always say sorry all the time. He'd just yell at me saying, don't say sorry. And I think that transitioned very well into business, where something's already your control and you don't apologize and kind of push forward.
It's a good answer. I like that. Second question. We are the Wealth Holders podcast. So can you name a high net worth individual or a wealth holder? And if you don't want to disclose their name, that's perfectly fine. But what did he or she teach you, either in business or in life?
So I've had a lot of great, learnings from different people along the way. I think that I'm going to turn that around a little bit. And I'm going to say that the multitude of wealth holders, the lesson I learned is that sometimes we respect the opinion of wealth holders a little bit too much. And that there's a lot of luck involved in some of the things that people do. There's a lot of skill sometimes too, but I suppose I learned that that just because someone made a lot of money doesn't mean that they're necessarily right.
They're just people, yeah.
Just people.
Yeah, good answer. Last question. I'm just a 26-year-old starting his journey in life. Any advice for the younger listeners out there?
I guess it's a weird world right now. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on in it that comes out of this chaos. It's a really great time to find something and find a niche and really grab onto it and kind of run with it if you have the chance to do it. So take that extra risk if you can.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. I do like letting my guests close off though. So here's your chance. Say whatever you'd like to the listeners out there.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank you all for listening. Kyle, just thank you for trying to get the word out on mining and, making this an exciting venture industry that people can grab onto, relate to, and have a good time with.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Kyle.